What's going on, my babies? Welcome back to another episode of The Spiritual Word. As always, I apologize for any noises in the background in advance and anything of that nature. And before I start these off, I like to start these off with a disclaimer by stating that these are for entertainment purposes only, and to always do your own research to come to your own conclusions, to have your answers, to make your own decisions, and I believe in your ability to do so and to be your own person. And before I start these, I have an audio version of the podcast anywhere you can find audio podcasts, and I have a video version of the podcast on YouTube, and they're both named The Spiritual Word. I'm your host, Jackie. I upload Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Mountain Time. And if science, spirituality, psychology, self-help, and philosophy are things you're interested in, those are my main topics. So I recommend subbing or following, or if those are things that you're interested in. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right into today's episode. And today's going to be another ranty type of episode just because I feel like there's some things that I don't say that I feel like I should say. And then when I don't say them and then I see them out in the world, I'm like, I should have said that. So this is going to be harsh. I'm not even going to kizzap, okay? And the reason that I say it's going to be harsh is because there's certain things that I feel like need to be addressed in the world around me that aren't really addressed. Like, for example, I don't want to address these to address these. Like, I'm not saying that these are by any means a bad thing. I just think that these are things that you should be aware of. If these are qualities that you have or qualities that you see, I think it's something to be aware of. I don't think that if you view something that it's bad. I think it's only bad in the ways that we use them and our relationship to said things, which obviously I'll get into, are bad. The relationships that we have, and the relationships that we develop with these said things and these different, things. So, with that being said, one of the things that I see a lot, especially like on my, I feel like this is just social media, but in the relation to the spiritual community, just because I'm there a lot, obviously. I do this, and not only do I do this, but I upload TikToks, and not only do I do TikToks, but, I stream, and I do all different types of things. And I'm on YouTube, and, so I'm in a different pool every minute of every day. Well, not every minute, obviously, because, I do this for a decent amount of time, but I dip my toes in a lot of different pools. And in social media itself, I think that there's something really, I don't want to say wrong, because it's not wrong. I think it's just that you can fall under, different kind of clickbait traps when it comes to spirituality. Like, I don't like those people who are like, things are about to change, because genuinely things don't just day and night change unless you have the ability to make that true. And even with that being true, the day and night shift is not going to come the way that you think it is, and it's not going to come the way that these people tell you it is. And I think that that's a very clickbaity thing, which I'm not saying that it's bad, because obviously if you're uploading on here, or if you're uploading podcasts, or if you're uploading on YouTube, or if you're, posting on TikTok, you want to get the views. You know what I mean? It's not like an intentionally bad thing that these creators do, but I think that it's kind of like, I'm gonna use this analogy. I used to be a very badass kid. Like, when I tell you bad, I was a very, very bad kid. And there's a bunch of stray cats in my neighborhood, and I used to set up traps for them. I'd put up a little crate of, those crates they used to carry milk, or in school, those little crates that carry milk, or the crates at the store. It's basically just a box with no top. I'd set that up, put a little stick that was those sticks that were perfect for slingshots, one with a V split in the middle, kind of like a little fork. And, set that up, and then put a little string on it, and then, have that string be pretty decently far away, so when there's an animal underneath it, I could pull it. and trap that animal. And I know this is very bad, I know. But I used to do that with the stray cats because I'm like, oh, I want to take them home. I want them to be mine. And that's what clickbait is. It's this setting of the bait and waiting for you to fall victim to this trap. Although the trap itself and the intentions of the person setting the trap up is not a bad thing. Like, my intentions as a little kid wasn't to do harm to this animal, but to take it home and to keep it and to feed it and to bathe it and to, give it a home. And so I don't think that the intentions of the person themselves are a bad thing, but I think that you have to be conscious of the fact that you're sitting in a trap. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes those content creators just want to bring you into this pool that is their content, and they don't know how to do that because everybody's so, dopamine fried, that the only way that they can get most people to do that, or a lot of people to do that, is through clickbait. So I'm not saying that it's bad itself. It's just a relationship to the thing itself. And so that's why, it's one of the things I want to make you guys aware of. Obviously, I don't get a lot of views, but it's also because I'm not promoting myself in those clickbaity ways. And because most of the time my stuff, or like the things that I talk about, isn't, I don't want to say that it's average information or that it's not average information. I think it is average information to the people who are on my wavelength. Like, if you already are spiritual, if what you say about your spirituality or about your, mind, body, and soul is really true for you, then I think that you fall into into my lap. Essentially, you fall into this page and you stumble across this in some way, shape, and form, and you stay on here because you identify with the content. And I think that anybody could identify with any content. So I think that that's also another thing you should be aware of. And, I'm sorry if you can hear that car going by, that's very loud. But another thing that I want people to be aware of is their relationships to themselves. Because I feel like this is one of the reasons why I did a whole season on this podcast about how to love yourself. Because I think that when you truly love yourself, you do what's best for yourself. And when you do what's best for yourself, you align with circumstances and people and places and ideas and things that are actually beneficial to you. And if you are doing those things, then I think it makes you more aware of the things that you're consuming and the things that you want to be consuming. And I think that's a very beneficial thing to look at. And another, just kind of like random ideas that, maybe you should take note of, maybe you shouldn't take note of, is your relationship to not only yourself, but your relationship to romantic people. Just because I feel like I see a lot of, not like, I don't want to say it's lack of intelligence. I think it's lack of caring or using the intelligence, because I think that everybody has a keen sense of intelligence. I think everybody, by nature, you have to be intelligent enough to be a human. Like, being a human comes with a basic intelligence. And I think that if you ignore that basic intelligence, then that's where you get quotation marks, the dumb people. But it's not people who are dumb, it's people who ignore what is being shown to them. And this can go any way, you know what I mean? Like, I could talk about this in school, I could talk about this with, other people, I could talk about this with the community, I could talk about this with yourself, I could talk about this with any skill that you're trying to develop, but specifically in romantic situations. Just because I feel like that's what a lot of people put their attention to. And I think that it shouldn't be that way, where a lot of people put their ideas into consumerism or into some sort of strategy for a life that isn't really genuinely working for them. And those are the things that we look at the most. Like, most people When you meet somebody, you ask them how they are. That's like the first thing you ask. And then you ask them, what are you doing? Or if you've known this person for an extreme amount of time or like a long time, then you sit there and you're like, oh, how are you? How have you been? What have you been up to? Where do you work? What do you do? I think that there's like a lack of intelligence when it comes to community, when it comes to um, society as a whole. And with that, I think it also depicts how much people pay attention to romantic partners because of the lack of community and because of the way that we as human beings live our life. When you're catching up with people, they don't really give a shit about, like, you know, your basic fundamental characteristics. Most people don't give a shit about who you actually are. And I think that there's something, I don't want to say that there's something wrong with that because everybody lives their own life and everybody should live their own life. I'm not saying that you should care about every single other person on this planet because I feel like you would never get anything done. But I think you should have like a basic stance for caring about people. And I'm sorry if you can hear all of these cars going by. Genuinely apologize. I have my window open just so that my room can breathe a little bit, and I didn't feel like closing it. So I apologize for all of the noises, but I've already stated that. So you're already aware of that. And the reason I want to talk about relationships in general is just because like that's what I see being kind of like saw out the most. Like most people, like, I'm not gonna say it's a lot of people, but I know a good handful of people who like really can't be alone. Like they can't be alone. And I find that to be a little bit on the unhealthier side of life just because you're not balanced. You need time alone just as much as you need time with other people, and you need time with other people just as much as you need time alone. And when I see people who can't do that, who can't balance that, there's no, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing because everybody's going to get to their points of, understandings and get to their point of, kind of evolution when they get to it. But I think these are things that could trigger that for you. And I think that it's okay to trigger that for you because I'm not doing the work. I'm just telling you, hey, there's something there. And if you want to do that, you can do that. And if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. So I think that is very informative for me to make this type of content. And so basically, this is what I'm trying to get at. I don't like, I can't say like because it's none of my business. I don't think that it's a very constructive thing for people to not have a balance of those two. And either way, people are going to live their life the way that they want to. So, regardless of what I say, it honestly doesn't fucking matter. You know what I mean? This is just my opinion. But I think that it's beneficial to talk about these things because the more you can get real with yourself, the more you can get honest with yourself. Do you struggle with these things? Are you somebody who feels attacked when you watch or you listen to my content? Because if that's the case, the only reason you feel attacked is because you know that there's something fundamentally there that you're not ready to get rid of. And there's this defensiveness because that's the way that you've survived for so long. It's not that that idea is necessarily wrong or that I'm wrong or that, you should be doing that, you shouldn't be doing that. I don't think should or shouldn'ts are real. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like clickbait. It could be real, but most likely you don't really know until you figure it out. You know what I mean? Like that's what a should is. And a shouldn't. And so I use should and shouldn't very loosely and very lightly whenever I do use them. But with that being said, it's not the idea that you do that. It's how often do you do that? And the more specific, I don't want to go into too much depth, but I also don't want to keep this extremely generalized because I feel like when super generalized, people have a hard time following me, and it's understandable. I'm not very clear and concise when it comes to my physical words, but for the sake of what's going on with you, and I'm just here to give you some sort of guidance on said things, and you know what's affecting you. I don't know what's affecting you. So if I give you a general stance for this advice, although you want really pinpointed advice, it's not helpful for me to tell you exactly step by step what you should be doing because then you never get to a point of in your personal evolution where you understand how to make decisions. And so basically when I'm talking about this thing, it's just this premise and this idea that like I need somebody else to survive. I need it is a survival, it's a necessity for me. Like I have to have this thing, and if I don't have this thing, oh my gosh, is life even worth it? And I think that there's like a level of that could no, I don't think that's healthy at all, but I think that there's like a level of balance that you need to have in that sort of circumstance because it can't just be, well, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life and I don't want anybody and I'm hyper independent and this and that, because I also think that that's not a healthy thing. And I myself have been working on this idea that you need a sense of community, and when you have this sense of community, you feel more fulfilled in your day-to-day average existence. Because I know a lot of people who are like, oh well, I don't have friends and I don't have family and that's why I'm so sad, and if I had these things then I wouldn't be so sad. And I had this, I had the same, I had, I have had, sorry, I cannot get my words right. The same experience when the tables were completely opposing. Like, for example, I know people who have the most amazing family, the most amazing friends, and they still feel alone. And they still feel like they can't talk to these people, and they still feel like if they did talk to these people, they would just be judged, even though that's not the case. And I don't think it would ever be the case. And, it's just what they feel. And sometimes you have to remember that your feelings are not necessarily the most helpful navigation tool. In the sense, obviously, it's circumstantially based. Like, if you're feeling fear in a point in life where you shouldn't feel fear, first recognize whether that's anxiety or if that's actual fear. Because, your feelings are a good navigating tool, but sometimes your feelings protect you to a point where it's not even protection at this point, it's overbearing. And I think that these are things you have to balance. You have to understand your feelings, you have to understand your emotions, you have to understand and not intellectualize them, but you have to physically understand them. Like when sadness comes up, you have to feel it and meet it. Meet it with love, meet it with compassion. Same with fear, same with, happiness, same with anything. Meet it with love because that's what it's really intentionally there for. It's there for you. It's there to keep you safe. And sometimes you have these feelings that are not real. And not real in the sense that you have these kind of like, how people say that, like, I don't know what anxiety like, or I don't know what depression's like, because why are you sad? Like, you have a beautiful, perfect life, and yet here you are crying about this thing. And how could you cry when you have everything you've ever wanted? Like, I hear this so often when it comes to famous rich people, because everybody else looks at them and they're like, that's what you wanted. You have everything you've ever wanted and you're still sad. And they want to be mean and criticize these people for feeling this way, but it's not something that you can actually help. You know what I mean? So that's why I say you have to meet it with compassion and love, because it's there for your survival, but at some point it hinders you. And at some point it's just overly bearing. You know what I mean? Like a mother's love could be so beneficial to your growth, but if the mother is overbearing, and has you in a chokehold and is so controlling that they don't let you breathe, that's not beneficial at that point. You know what I mean? And so it's a balance of these things, and you have to understand where your balance is and where the balance lies for you specifically, because obviously this is why I keep everything super general, because I can't speak for you and my body is not going to feel the same way as yours. The only emotions that I, have to physically balance on a day-to-day basis is my anger, because I'm very passionate, and anger just happens to be one of those areas that I ignite so fast. And so for me, it's a balance of, okay, I have to understand that this is temporary, and when I'm angry for my own reasons, and my own reasons are valid reasons. However, this does not validate the actions behind the anger, because I'm validating the response to the environment, to the stimulus. But it doesn't mean that if I punch somebody because they deserve to be punched, that that I should go out and punch people. It's all about the balance. I can feel angry, and it is my right to feel, but it doesn't mean that I have to go out and punish everybody else for the things that I'm feeling. And most of the time, when you're feeling like, my feelings are generally caused by stimulus, and or like stimulation. Like when people come up to me and they're like, "Oh, you still doing this? You still doing that?" Like just trying to get a reaction out of me, and it's easy for them to get a reaction out of me because that's what that's the thing that I struggle with the most, and they know that, so they press the buttons. And so, in order for me to not just immediately go for hands, I just sit there and accept what is. And I sit there and I'm like, okay, it's my right to be upset. I am alive, which means I'm worthy of feeling, and I'm worthy of a reaction if I feel like I should react. And in moments, it's kind of like you choose your battles, like when someone goes over the line, like if somebody came up to me and they're like, "Oh, you're a piece of shit," and they spit on me, I would genuinely just swing. Because why the fuck are you doing that? That's way too extra, and if you're gonna be extra, I guess I should match your extra. Instead of just like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, "Oh, be the bigger person 100% of the time," because I genuinely don't think that it's helpful. Well, I don't know. I kind of take that back, because I think it would be helpful. But in that situation, I don't know if I'd be able to control myself. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like if I don't know, if you have a pet, and that pet of like years and years and years and years died on you, it's kind of like, oh, don't be upset. Just choose to be the bigger person. That dog or that cat is in heaven now. Why can't you just accept that? I feel like that's what I'd be trying to explain to you. But in reality, in your physical reality, would that be the case? Probably not. You know what I mean? So like, that's why I say these things that you do are not necessarily bad. It's just your relationship to those things. If you keep doing that, if you keep like, I think it's exactly like the grief that I'm talking about. Like if you had a cat or a dog for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden, boom, they're dead, and you start crying, it's okay to fucking cry, because it's a natural reaction. But if you're crying after years and years, and you have ruined your life because of, the grief that you're feeling, I feel like, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line and you're like, okay, enough is enough? And I think that most people don't even have that line drawn for themselves. And I think that you have to figure that out. And in order to figure that out, you have to willingly be loving and compassionate to yourself. And I don't think that people are loving and compassionate to themselves, because they rather sit there and be like, no, I need to get over this now. I need to be better now. But in reality, everything's kind of a build-up, and you're never at the end of the race. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like sitting there and telling yourself, okay, sprint. to get to this finish line. Sprint as hard as you can. And then once you're out of breath and you're wheezing and you can't run anymore, that's when you've deserved the medal. But in reality, you're still not done. There's still more race to go. Even if you swear you've earned that medal, because in reality, if you're in a race and you stop before the finish line, you're not getting the medal as hard as you've worked. You know what I mean? So I think that it's about pacing yourself and knowing your pace, because nobody knows your pace. And it's about sitting there and encouraging yourself and loving yourself and being able to push yourself to more and more, heights. As many as you can go. You know what I mean? It's not about being the fastest person ever to exist. It's about, okay, you know what? I'm going to make this goal. And then once you achieve that goal, then you go after another one. And I think that another reason why people don't know their lines or don't know their limits is because they don't have an overarching theme to the things that are going on around them. Like if you're like, oh, I want to be in a relationship. Okay, what was that? What's the goal of that? Is it to just enjoy somebody for who they are and all the qualities that they bring into the world? Is it to enjoy them as a human being? Or is it because you want the marriage? Or is it because you want the white picket fence and you want someone to kind of, help you out in that circumstance? Is it because you want help financially? Is it because you want help spiritually? What is the goal? And I think that a lot of people have this non-realistic goal when it comes to specifically partners, because it's either, oh, I want this person to take care of me, I want this person to provide for me, especially coming from girls, all girl family. That's what I see the most. And when it comes down to, oh, they're not doing these things, they're not fulfilling my emotional needs, they're not taking care of me the way that I need to be taken care of, you have to be specific with yourself. Where do you draw the line? And it's not a bad thing. I think that everybody in everyday situations and everyday life, they take advantage of people. Every single person. I think every single person in the world takes advantage of at least one person in their lifetime. And I think that people are doing that continuously because that's how you do anything in reality. And it's either you can do it yourself, which is it takes a lot of strength to get up and run a marathon for yourself and nobody else, or to pay somebody to run it for you. That shit's easy. You know what I mean? So I think that we do what's easy in this world, and because of that, things don't necessarily, work out as best as they could or as efficient as they could be. And I'm not saying that these are shoulds or shouldn'ts. Like I said, take that with a grain of salt. Take everything that I say with a grain of salt, because who the fuck am I to you? And, point of this video, I encourage you to take care of yourself. Body, I almost said bind. Body and mind. Put together, bind. Body, mind, and soul. And whatever that means to you, only you know. And it takes time to process that and to learn that and set goals for yourself. If you have this goal that I'm going to journal at least twice a month, and then you journal twice a month. And, everybody starts somewhere. Start with baby steps, small steps. And I genuinely think that you will go so far from these tiny steps, because everybody is climbing up this mountain that is life. And then slowly you go back down. And I think it's very rewarding to enjoy the process and to enjoy where you are and to know that where you are is okay, and to be very clear with yourself on where you see yourself going and where you see your life going. Just because I feel like a lot of people have this fear of setting goals because they're like, well, if I don't reach it, I'm going to be so disappointed. But you won't see that as a disappointment because it'll probably have led you to something else that you love even more. Like, I know people who went to college for 8 years, got a bachelor's degree, and ended up hating that career. So it's not a bad thing because it leads you to more and new discoveries. And even if you don't accomplish the things that you want to accomplish within a year, within 2 years, within 3 years, within 4 years, you have your whole life. There's no need to rush. This is not a race. You're not competing for any medals. You're just trying to exist. And existence should be taken beautifully and with luxury, and you need to stop and smell the roses and enjoy everything that there is to enjoy. With that being said, thanks for tuning in and tapping in. I'm gonna end this here, and I'm sorry for all of the cars that went by and all the things in the background that you can hear. But I hope that this was beneficial in some way, shape, and form, and that you enjoyed yourself. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.